Hello and welcome to another episode of the SEO Unplugged podcast. I'm your host Itamar Blauer. Today I'm joined with Alex Moss, who's the principal SEO at Yoast and the co-founder of Firecast. Hey Alex, how's it going?
Not too bad for a Monday. How about you?
I'm all good, thank you. All good. So what we're going to do today is talk about agentic commerce or agent first commerce, which really and truly is something that I think people in our space may sort of like obviously have heard the terms or kind of see what's going on, but I think for the masses out there, or even a lot of people in our industry still who may not realize how big of a deal this type of tech is and how it's sort of affecting everything from consumerism, how people are going to shop online, but also in terms of when you think of SEO, rankings, and how does this sort of ecosystem work if we're going to move towards an agentic first type of commerce experience. So how would you sort of, maybe to give us an introduction, maybe define what all of this stuff actually means?
Sure. So agentic commerce, I would say in a nutshell, is the act of which an LLM platform can purchase something on your behalf with or without your approval. That's in short. So an agent would go away and buy something for you. And this could be as simple as, let's skip a bit into the future so everything's connected. I could literally say into a phone to my agent, go and buy me some new shoes with that jacket I bought last week. And that's it. And it would go away. It would do the research. And of course, you can have a say in and approval in terms of part of the journey. Do you want to have a look at a few different types? But if you trust it completely, and people will, the more that time goes on, you might buy a black jacket and then just let the agent go out and get you a pair of shoes that go with it, complimentary. And it'll know things, it'll know context and memory. It knows what you like, what you don't like. It knows what size you are. It knows what kind of shoes you've been buying in the past based on the emails that it can connect itself to. So it might know that I've been buying Adidas trainers for years now, and only recently I bought some on running shoes, and maybe that's something it needs to take into account. And that's one thing, is finding and selecting what those things are. And like mobile first browsing back in the day when that was first coming out, there was a message of, at some point everyone's going to be using a mobile, and when that happens, mobile first responsive is going to be there. And then it was, and it happened, and now here we are with mobile first responsive. This is going to be a longer, maybe it'll take a couple of years, but let's face it, in 5 years, I don't think any of us, especially us more advanced folk in the techie world, are going to have any pessimism in giving an agent a task to go out and buy that pair of shoes without you knowing about them, because you just trust it inherently. And that's kind of it in a nutshell, is handing off and delegating the actual purchase process to an agent.
So here's then the question of when the agents, so in an agent first world, when especially from a shopping or commerce perspective, if it's going to do that research on its own and then either buy or recommend types of products to buy, and then you sort of give approval, what's the sort of steps or what's the kind of methodology behind how it performs these types of searches? Like, what do we know about how this intrinsically works at this moment in time?
At this moment in time, some of it's a bit murky. So, for example, you've got the Agentic Commerce Protocol, which came out around October, November 25. That was launched by OpenAI and Stripe, and as a partnership, a way of actually purchasing something. So they obviously got together with the payment purchaser, the processing about it. And then in January, UCP came out, and that was launched by Google, which kind of broadens the ambit, and they can be used as layers side by side. But what they both do is ingest content in the same way, not in the same way, but in a similar way that all the other LLMs are ingesting normal content. And with that, I mean, I've been saying it for years, and a few of us have been saying it for years, that structured data is a way in which interpretation is minimized and more direction and concise information is given. So if I go back to that, I bought a jacket last week and I want to buy some shoes. Let's just assume that you're a site owner who has not optimized their shoe shop. And because of that, the agent that goes out there is going to be looking for things. And if it doesn't ingest something as easily as your competitor, guess which one it's going to select and pull back and potentially purchase without the end user even being aware that that brand existed in the first place. They'll just go to the competitor of that brand. So it is very much about, it sounds weird, like doing the stuff we've been doing already, like making sure that everything's populated, concise. And when I say populated, I don't just mean X amount of minimum words inside product description. Which isn't anything that we should be harping on about anymore, is minimum. If something can be described in 50 words, great. But also images, videos, social approval by third parties, all of those things is still kind of metrics we were going by in the native part of SEO for the last 20 years, but it's still the same thing today. It's all the same methodology and ethos that these LLMs are programmed to live by in order to select something. But again, it has to be optimized and populated properly for it to be interpreted in the best way possible.
Sure, and I guess the optimization part is maybe a two-front type of scenario, right? Because you're sort of referring to the optimization from the website's perspective, but then what sort of needs to be optimized from a merchant perspective, or if it's like a particular CMS. So, for example, when I think it was OpenAI had a partnership going with Shopify to be able to provide these sort of checkout experiences directly within ChatGPT. But that's obviously a Shopify specific type of platform. So if you're, say, an e-commerce shop, but you're hosted on Wix or a different type of CMS, then what does that mean for you? Are you going to be gate kept out of it, or are these protocols that you're referring to more universal generally that anyone is able to, or any type of platform is able to sort of take part and optimize really for that?
Well, these things are, the protocols kind of open source out there. UCP is open source, got its own GitHub. ACP is kind of a little bit more hidden behind the scenes, but you can still, and ACP isn't out as of this moment that we're talking right now. And we don't know when it will be out. And when it does, people hop onto it. But right now, I think it's testing. And when it comes to open versus closed, so you use Shopify and Wix, you're at the behest of these content management systems at the moment. That's the bad thing. The good thing is that they actually seem to be very at the forefront of everything, especially Shopify, right? Because this is all commerce, right? This is the future of their business. So they have to ensure that they're going to be as adaptable as quickly as possible to these things that are happening. So I'm not surprised that Shopify are making the efforts that they're making, but you have to kind of just wait and trust the folk at Shopify that on day one, when they say something's going to be released, it will be, and that it's available to everyone possible. I'm sure they'll roll it out to some pro plans, and people are actually paying more than the basic. But then you've got folk like WordPress and WooCommerce, where it's more open source, but they've got a benefit in the fact that they're open source and they've got a good community around them. But they're also a bad part where open source can be a potential hurdle for getting stuff through the door and shipped. So we've also got to rely on Automatic and WooCommerce to make sure that they're doing the under the hood commerce protocol part to make sure that these things can be done. And you can be in ChatGPT and get selected something from a WooCommerce shop and be able to buy it very easily. But we don't have much control over that, unfortunately, until the CMSs and the platforms work very hand in hand. And it's good to see. It's good to see that in November 25, when ACP came out, that Stripe and OpenAI and Shopify were all kind of doing the press together on the same day. It's clear that they were working together for months on end, rather than sometimes other platforms out there have to just wait until something comes out and then jump on it. So it's nice to know that these platforms do speak to the CMSs and popular plugins out there and extensions. So it's good that everyone's a bit forward thinking, but it's going to be a fast race to be part of as well.
Sure. And I guess if we maybe hone in a bit on the AI platforms who are going to be able to facilitate this, and we'll put Google aside for now, but ChatGPT was probably the first who sort of engaged in these types of maybe works, or at least had something sort of to go out to the public and announce that, hey, we're going to be doing this sort of agent first type of commerce experience. But let's say people who don't use ChatGPT, what if there's people who use Perplexity or they use Claude as their AI assistant of choice. So how do these technologies sort of stack up when it comes to the consistency of the output or the execution? And the reason why I sort of try and phrase it like that is because, you know, different AI assistants and platforms will know different things about you. And they might not be completely different things, but maybe it's just the amount that they understand about you will be different because that's generally based on your usage. So if you're using ChatGPT as your primary one, then you would imagine that you'd have more success getting a better tailored type of agentic commerce experience than you would if you try to do the same type of prompt on Perplexity, but you don't have as much of the sort of context behind you as a person on that platform. So how do you sort of see that working?
That's a really good question. It's actually hard to answer because all of these platforms have their own agendas, their own goals, and it's hard to know which one's going to jump on what. I feel at the moment I'm still kind of shopping around which LLM to use. I use various for various different things, and I naturally gravitate to what, like Claude. Anything to do with technical work, coding is all Claude. I don't even touch ChatGPT on a daily basis now. Gemini has kind of got more into my life. And you said not to bring up Google, but it's actually the elephant in the room when you were talking about previous data. And it's actually really important. I think that's what ChatGPT may have realized along the line, is that they're working on the assumption that everyone's going to stop using everything Google and just move everything they do onto ChatGPT. And as well as that, they'll automatically know everything about them for the last 20 years. That's what Google's got in their back pocket, is that they can do that. And with the recent, in January, they released the personal touch of AI mode, and they're now going into your Gmail and everything. Let me tell you, my Gmail address goes back over 20 years, I think. Whenever is it over 20 years old? I don't even know. Whenever it came out, I was in the beta. I was in the first million, even though Alex Moss had already been taken as a username, always. But that's part of the thing of it knows everything about me in a good way. In a good way. So it will know. And if we go back to the jacket and shoes, ChatGPT just doesn't know that context. It doesn't know that I've been buying Adidas for 10 years. It does not know that. Only if I connect it together, and people have that lack of trust. And only the forward-thinking, maybe experimental people like you and I, who are quite techie, are going to use all these things and decide maybe what's there in the long-term future. But this is going to be an interesting year, I think, in general for 2026. Like, is ChatGPT still going to be the forefront at the end of the year? I don't think anyone can actually predict that, because Claude's running up here quite fast. And now Gemini last year, all of a sudden, not came out of nowhere because it was always there, but its popularity did. And then you've got mass adoption. My parents, who know nothing about technical SEO, my dad uses Gemini daily because he's now changed. He's now not using Google search as much. I find that really interesting. Again, considering he knows nothing. He asked me to go around to his house to update a password on like an account. That's how little he knows or is confident about it. But Gemini, great. And he has the trust, and it has his previous context there. So they know who he is. So all of those things combined, I think Google's going to maybe have some power play this year, a bit more so. But I'm very interested to see what everyone does. And when it comes back to commerce, ChatGPT know that they need that on the forefront for them to be maybe ahead of the game. And people like Perplexity and Claude may just adopt UCP, which is an open protocol. So they can do things whenever they want, as soon as they're prepared to, depending on their own goals for this year. But it'd be really interesting to see which one came out with things first, and if someone moved to another platform this year, or like if there was a big, migration to Gemini or back to Gemini. It's gonna be an interesting race, but commerce will lead that, because whoever's winning with the commerce will win with the adoption. And that's going to not, and it's sort of techies that need to do that experimentation, because again, I don't think my dad is going to trust an agent to go out and purchase something on his behalf. He's going to want a lot of decision-making input. But over the years, that'll kind of go, just as people weren't really confident with online shopping when it first came out in general. And then eventually everyone mass adopted, and now everyone uses Google Wallet as though it's like breathing air. So it'll be interesting to see. Soon I think with some things that people buy, I think it'll be weird to buy something with your own mind made up. I think there'll be some products that are just, it's like Agentic wins. They're doing 99% of the purchasing for those things. And it'll be interesting what those things are as well and how that changes commerce.
Yeah, definitely a lot to unpack there. I think with that last point, I'd imagine we'll get to the stage where you can sort of confidently get, especially for like recurring orders, but even for one-off types of purchases, where because the nature of the way things are moving towards a more personalized, more like lengthened colloquial types of searching behavior, where you can provide a lot of, or a lot more context in terms of like looking for this particular type of product, which will be delivered by this date within this price range that has good reviews, which is good for XYZ. And like these would be able to sort of get fulfilled for you through an AI assistant. I think the concept of the UCP I find quite fascinating, and I think probably one of the most important things is that it is open source, because I would imagine when OpenAI had that sort of partnership with Shopify, I think their sort of agenda may have been to have some kind of exclusivity types of deals, and I think that like once things are exclusive, then you have so much more sort of power. And I think that the sort of UCP aspect of it being open source kind of negates that, because then anyone is able to sort of play on an even playing field. So you don't have to be, let's say, a first mover or a bigger type of platform, but to know that there is no exclusivity there, and you sort of can just use the tech that's available open source to create these outputs to create a better user experience. I think generally it's going to make things more competitive, but the aspect of which one's going to be out on top, will come out on top, we have no idea. Absolutely no clue. I think it's impossible to predict. The only thing that I would say is just not to sleep on Google for the points that you mentioned with the data, the capital behind it. It's just absolutely insane, especially considering that still people are using Google search. Maybe not your dad, but there are people out there who still use Google search on a day-to-day basis. Or if, for example, they're using AI assistants to research for something, but then still might jump back on Google to look at reviews properly or to navigate through to different places and all these sorts of things. So, with everything quite sort of not fully abstract, because there are things that have been moving, but we are in a very early stage at this moment in time. What is it to sort of sum up? What do you sort of see? And I know you touched upon this briefly in terms of like the future of agent first commerce or agentic commerce and what that looks like. But what do you sort of hope to see, I guess, in the future regarding this, in terms of maybe your sort of abstract way of thinking about practically what this means for the end user?
I personally, if it was, I think it should not stay how it is in terms of the platforms that we have out there. What I don't like is one, coughing everything else up, choke it, like making the others fail. And I feel like I don't want it to be MySpace where like there was this really popular thing at the beginning and then someone else made something that was better, but then just completely made MySpace redundant. And now there's Facebook, and now Facebook is dominant in the social. And then they started buying out all the little ones, which is why they own WhatsApp and things like that. And I don't want that to happen. It's like having, I haven't got multiple cars. I only own one car, but it's like having multiple cars, one for the weekend to look nice, one for like a run around, one that you don't mind scratching now and again. I feel like there should be a platform version of that. I like how I can go onto Claude and only speak about technical stuff. And then I can go onto Gemini. I'm only speaking about personal stuff. It's like there are two people. Naturally, I get two bits of feedback and they treat me differently because it's like being two totally different humans speaking to the two. And I like that. And maybe that's the thing about commerce. Who knows? Maybe there'll be one that, like, let's say, for example, ChatGPT is the one that just dominates with commerce, and that's the one. and you don't really use Perplexity for commerce, even though it's there. Like but you can still do it if you want to, and it can still select things using the same protocols. That's what I would want, is that everyone's using the protocols and you just use what you want to use. It's like a bit more democratic at that point. Otherwise, you fast forward 10 years and then you've got problems that Google have now with, monopoly and DOJ and all of those things that, like, that's a shame, because I do like Google, and, its product set is really, really good. And you can't deny, that, they do some weird things that are questionable, but in the big grand scheme of things, they are doing good for the world, and they are advancing technology. They're making all their competitors, race up to them. So they're making them more passionate about getting more out the door as well. So I don't know. I like the healthy competition, and I feel like it should stay that way until AI in the general populace levels out a bit. Because last year I remember saying 2024 was like, what's going on in terms of AI? 2025, everyone will figure it out. And then 2026 is about applying what we learned in 2025. I don't know how right I am about that prediction. I still think we're still looking at how everything works still, and it's taking us longer, which also gets to the point of, is this adoption, is AI actually going to change everything in our lives in the next 3 years? Is like 20% of the world going to be jobless in 3 years? I don't know. Whilst it can be a scary thought, I just don't think it'll be as fast as everyone says it is. And if it's slower, it'll give us time to adapt to these things, just like the technology around it.
Yeah, I mean, only time will tell to do with that. But from an agentic or agent-first commerce perspective, I just hope these platforms don't get hacked, and then all of a sudden everyone is just spending a bunch of money on some random stuff without knowing. So that's one thing that I hope doesn't happen. But yeah, to conclude for today, because it was a very interesting discussion, and I think this is something that I'm pretty sure will be applicable for the vast majority of internet users, and the people who are shopping online, or even people who are shopping offline, who may sort of just find the ease of doing these sorts of consumer decisions and purchases a lot more effectively, a lot more efficiently, and a lot better overall. But where can people find you if they want to get in touch, or also, I say people, listeners, but also maybe the AI platforms, if they want to have a chat, get your thoughts on how they can improve their sort of bits to do with agent first commerce. Where can people find you if they want to get in touch?
Sure, thank you. My website's alex-moss.co.uk. I couldn't get alexmoss.co.uk. Some guy called Ian owned it and tried to sell it me for 500 quid, and I said no. But other than that, I'm on LinkedIn as Alex Moss, of course, and I'm also on X, not as much as I used to be. I'm mainly on LinkedIn, but you can send me a DM and everything. But yeah, on X, I'm at Alex Moss as well.
Alrighty, thank you very much, Alex, for your time. Thanks for everyone listening out there as well. And as always, we will see you in the next episode.